Welcome to Week 7, Civil Rights and the Art of Resistance. We begin with this striking 1944 ink drawing by Charles White, an artist whose work throughout the 20th century helped to define African American visual resistance. In Soldier, White portrays a black serviceman with quiet dignity and powerful resolve, an image of patriotism and humanity at a time when black Americans were fighting overseas for freedoms they were denied at home. This drawing reminds us that art has always been a battlefield of its own, a space where representation, injustice, and identity collide. This week, we'll explore how artists across decades have responded to civil rights struggles through protest, photography, murals, and performance. We'll see how visual culture shaped public memory and helped drive social change. From the sit-ins of the 1960s to Black Lives Matter and beyond, civil rights art continues to provoke, mourn, uplift, and resist. So let's dive in. Gordon Parks' American Gothic is one of the most iconic photographs in American visual history. Created in 1942 while Parks was working for the Farm Security Administration, the image features Ella Watson, a black government charwoman, standing stoically in front of an American flag holding a broom and mop. This deliberate echo of Grant Wood's original American Gothic transforms a symbol of wholesome Americana into a quiet but forceful critique of systemic racism and class disparity. Parks used his camera as a weapon against injustice, capturing moments that revealed the human cost of discrimination. This photograph isn't just a portrait, it's a protest. Through Watson's upright stance and direct gaze, Parks affirms black dignity while exposing the contradiction between American ideals and the lived reality of many citizens. As we consider the role of photography in the civil rights movement, American Gothic reminds us how one image can change a nation's conscience. David Hammond's Injustice Case is a visceral indictment of the American justice system's treatment of black citizens. Created in 1970, the piece uses a body print, literally the artist pressing his greased body onto paper and dusting it with pigment, to depict a bound and gagged figure confined by the frame of the American flag. This image directly references the trial of Bobby Seale, co-founder of the Black Panther Party, who was famously gagged and shackled during his court proceedings in 1969. Hammonds transforms this moment of state-sponsored humiliation into a haunting monument of resistance. By fusing the human form with the national symbol, he forces the viewer to confront the contradictions between American ideals and oppressive realities. The flag, normally a symbol of freedom, becomes a cage. This artwork sits at the intersection of performance, protest, and printmaking, and exemplifies how black artists of the era used their bodies and the trauma inflicted upon them as material to speak truth to power. Dana C. Chandler's Fred Hampton's Door 2 is both a memorial and a damning political statement. The work confronts the brutal assassination of Fred Hampton, a charismatic leader of the Black Panther Party, who was killed by Chicago police in a 1969 raid as he slept. Chandler uses an actual door riddled with bullet holes to replicate the one from Hampton's apartment, turning it into a chilling artifact of state violence. The mixed media composition includes painted blood, slogans, and symbolic imagery, creating a raw and unflinching narrative of martyrdom and injustice. By appropriating the very structure breached in Hampton's murder, Chandler demands that we see the physical evidence of a racialized violence, not just as a history but as an ongoing reality. The piece is a part of a broader tradition in black art that refuses to sanitize trauma. Instead, it insists on bearing witness, making Chandler's Door not just a metaphor, but a site of memory, protest, and continued resistance. Posters, flyers, and ephemera were key tools of visual resistance. Art became portable protest, echoing across churches, campuses, and city streets. This 1964 poster for the Freedom Singers captures a vital but sometimes overlooked aspect of the civil rights movement, the power of music as a tool of resistance and unity. Formed by the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or the SNCC, the Freedom Singers were young activists who traveled the country using song to raise awareness, funds, and morale. Their performances blended traditional gospel, spirituals, and protest songs, transforming familiar melodies into rallying cries for justice. This poster, with its bold typography and graphic simplicity, reflects the grassroots visual style of the movement, direct, handmade, and urgent. It wasn't just an advertisement, it was a call to gather, to listen, and to act. Music became a way to humanize the struggle and connect it across racial and regional divides. Posters like this serve not only to announce performances, but also to document the cultural labor of the movement, reminding us that activism can sing, weep, and shout, and carry a tune straight into the heart of change. Painted during one of the most turbulent years in modern American history, Faith Ringgold's The Flag is Bleeding presents the U.S. flag as both a national symbol and a shroud for racial injustice. At the center, a black man and a white man and a woman lock arms in a gesture that might suggest unity, but the black man clutches a knife and blood drips across the stars and stripes. Ringgold forces us to confront the contradiction between American ideals and lived realities. In 1967, urban uprisings, political assassinations, and deep racial divides were common. The painting's title suggests that America itself is wounded, and healing requires more than symbolic gestures. It's a stark reminder that the fight for civil rights was never about legal equality. It was about challenging the very fabric of the nation's identity. Barbara Jones Hogu's Unite, created between 1969 and 1971, captures a bold, unapologetic spirit of the Black Power era. Jones Hogu was a founding member of AfriCobra, the African Commune of Bad Relevant Artists, a Chicago-based collective dedicated to making art that spoke directly to black communities. In this screen print, a line of figures raises clenched fists, a universal sign of resistance and solidarity, set against the repeated command, "Unite." The work connects directly to the civil rights movement's later phase, when frustration with slow progress pushed many activists toward a message of self-determination, cultural pride, and collective action. It bridges the energy of street protest with the visual punch of graphic design, embodying the belief that art could mobilize people just as effectively as speeches or demonstrations. Unite is not just a call, it's a visual rallying cry for justice, dignity, and shared struggle. Elizabeth Catlett's I Am the Negro Woman series is a landmark in both African American art and feminist resistance. Created in the mid-1940s, these bold black and white lino cuts depict scenes of strength, labor, education, and protest, each anchored by its declarative titles like I Have Been Given the World My Songs, or I Have Special Reservations. Catlett's use of lino cut was no accident. It's a democratic medium meant to be shared, reproduced, and distributed widely, aligning with her political values and belief in art as a tool for change. This series uplifts black women as the backbone of American life, asserting their place in history at a time when they were too often erased. These prints are not just portraits, they are declarations of visibility and agency. Catlett fuses the personal and the political, reminding us that the struggle for civil rights includes a deeply gendered dimension. This work still speaks powerfully to intersectionality today. Norman Rockwell was a white American illustrator best known for his depictions of idyllic American life portrayed on the covers of the Saturday Evening Post. In the mid-1960s, Rockwell produced a series of paintings that were the opposite of that. Instead of portraying idealized scenes of American life, he pointed out the problems with society instead. This powerful image by Rockwell marks a pivotal moment in the civil rights movement. Titled "The Problem We All Live With," it depicts 6-year-old Ruby Bridges being escorted by U.S. Marshals into an all-white school in New Orleans in 1960. Rockwell, known for his idealized portrayals of American life, shocked many of his fans by tackling such a charged subject. Ruby walks with quiet dignity, flanked by faceless marshals, while racial slurs and a smashed tomato appear on the wall behind her. The contrast between her innocence and the hatred surrounding her is stark and heartbreaking. Rockwell originally painted this for Look magazine in 1964 after leaving the Saturday Evening Post, which had restricted him from addressing any racial issues. This image helped reshape the national conversation on race, demonstrating how mainstream artists could use their platforms to confront injustice. It remains one of the most iconic images of racial desegregation and protest in American history. In the lower right, you'll see a photograph of President Barack Obama meeting with Ruby Bridges and looking at the actual painting in the White House back in 2011. When it was first invented, photography fought fiercely to be accepted as a legitimate art form. In fact, it was one of the most powerful tools of the civil rights era, transforming local struggles into national and international causes. Images of peaceful protesters facing police dogs, fire hoses, and hostile crowds made injustice visible in many ways that words alone could not. Photojournalists, both black and white, risked violence to capture moments that challenged public complacency and swayed political opinion. Photographs became undeniable evidence in the fight for civil rights, shaping public memory and galvanizing support for change. This photograph captures Dorothy Height, a key but often overlooked figure in the civil rights movement during the historic 1963 March on Washington. As president of the National Council of Negro Women and a lifelong advocate for both racial and gender equity, Height was instrumental in organizing the event, yet was not invited to speak on stage. This reflects the gendered dynamics within the movement, where women were often the backbone of activism but left out of the spotlight. Height's presence in this image is calm and commanding, reminding us that true leadership often takes place behind the scenes. Her work bridged civil rights and women's rights, paving the way for future generations of intersectional activists. Today, Dorothy Height is recognized as one of the big six of the movement, despite being left out of early media narratives. This image restores her rightful place in history. This iconic photograph captures a moment from the 1963 sit-in movement, where young black college students here in Jackson, Mississippi, peacefully occupied segregated lunch counters to protest racial discrimination. This particular image from a Woolworth's counter became a symbol of nonviolent resistance and the power of youth-led activism. The sit-ins were not only courageous acts of civil disobedience, but also strategic performances that forced everyday Americans to confront the immorality of segregation. Notice the calm determination of the protesters amid jeers, abuse, and threats from onlookers. This was a battle of dignity against dehumanization. Artistically, the image holds compositional tension, with its rigid lines and still figures suggesting both restraint and resistance. In museums today, this photo stands as a testament to how ordinary settings like a diner can become powerful stages for political and cultural transformation. These sit-ins galvanized national attention and helped fuel the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This photograph documents the powerful Capitol Crawl protest of 1990, a pivotal moment in the disability rights movement. Activists, many with physical disabilities, abandoned their wheelchairs and mobility devices to crawl up the steps of the U.S. Capitol, demanding passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The image is visceral and symbolic, laying bare the inaccessibility built into our institutions. Protesters like Jennifer Keelan, an 8-year-old girl with cerebral palsy, became iconic symbols of the movement's urgency and humanity. The Capitol Crawl challenged the public to confront how exclusion is physically embedded in our architecture and policies. Just weeks after this protest, the ADA was signed into law. This act of resistance reframed disability not as a personal tragedy, but as a civil rights issue, and it showed that protest art doesn't always live in galleries. Sometimes it lives in the human body, climbing stone steps towards justice. This image captures older activists participating in a 2020 Black Lives Matter protest, highlighting the powerful intersection of age and activism. Often overlooked in media portrayals of protest movements, elder participants bring not only lived experience, but also historical memory, many having marched in earlier civil rights struggles of the 1960s and 70s. Their presence challenges ageist assumptions that social engagement belongs only to the young. In fact, their involvement reaffirms that resistance is a lifelong practice. Holding signs, chanting, and marching, these elders embody a multi-generational commitment to justice. Their wrinkles and gray hair are not signs of decline, but symbols of resilience, wisdom, and continuity. In a culture that often marginalizes older adults, especially women and people of color, this photograph reminds us that protest is ageless and that some of the loudest calls for change come from those who have seen it all before. This striking mural captures protesters holding "I am a man" signs, iconic emblems of the 1968 sanitation workers' strike in Memphis. While the slogan originated within the civil rights movement, its message resonates powerfully in confronting xenophobia too. By demanding recognition of full humanity across lines of race, class, or national origin, the signs became potent statements against exclusion and marginalization. During the march, predominantly black sanitation workers asserted their dignity against systemic invisibility. The demand to be seen as fully human dovetails with contemporary rights against xenophobia, where immigrants and refugees often face dehumanization. This art not only symbolizes unity and self-assertion, but also reminds us that civil rights struggles are interconnected. When one group's humanity is under attack, it undermines the human worth of us all. This mural, depicting Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, exemplifies how street art has become one of the most immediate, visible, and impactful tools for protest and change in recent years. Created in the wake of global demonstrations around racial injustice, gender inequality, and political upheaval, murals like this one transform public walls into communal canvases of resistance. Notice the bold colors, powerful typography, and symbolic figures. Murals of this kind often blend portraiture with slogans to amplify the voices of marginalized communities. Unlike traditional gallery spaces, murals are democratic. Anyone walking by becomes part of the audience, and sometimes even the message. These works are often created collectively, involving local artists, activists, and residents, which deepens their emotional and cultural resonance. Murals for change don't just reflect unrest, they actively shape civic dialogue. They serve as both a call to action and a historical record of collective resilience and hope. Their impermanence only adds urgency. They speak loudly, even if not forever. This powerful image captures a performance protest staged in 2014 during the height of the Black Lives Matter movement. The duct tape over their mouths is a visceral, symbolic gesture signifying the systemic silencing of black voices in conversations about race, justice, and gender. As a form of performance art, this action blends visual symbolism with embodied protest. It draws from a long lineage of feminist and civil rights performance strategies where the body becomes both the message and the medium. The stillness, the uniformity, and the muteness in this moment create a haunting contrast to the explosive urgency of the issues being addressed. Rather than chanting or marching, these people use silence as confrontation, forcing viewers to consider who gets to speak and who is continually unheard. It's a striking reminder that protest isn't always loud. Sometimes the most unsettling truths are told without words. This striking performance-based protest draws attention to the missing and murdered indigenous women, or the MMIW crisis. The red handprint painted across the mouth is a potent symbol used by Native American women to represent the silencing of indigenous voices. It signals centuries of violence, erasure, and institutional neglect toward Native communities, especially women and girls. Thousands of indigenous women have gone missing or have been murdered without proper investigation. The red hand communicates both rage and mourning, challenging viewers to confront this injustice. Like other performance protests, the MMIW movement uses the body as a site of resistance, conveying what words alone cannot. This imagery has become a national symbol of resilience and a call to action across both art and advocacy spaces.
In 1985, artist Susan Ackoff Ortega completed for the freedom of South Africa a vibrant 10 feet by 23 feet 5 inches mural in Manhattan's La Plaza Cultural La Lucha Mural Park, created in partnership with the Art Against Apartheid campaign. The mural is a colorful celebration of South African women, mothers, students, and workers, depicted as frontline activists demanding freedom. The composition incorporates signs reading "End the Past Laws," "Free all political prisoners now," and "Free Nelson Mandela," alongside the rallying cries, "The people shall govern," and "Equal work for equal pay." Ortega's creative approach was deeply research-based. Using archival photographs from the ANC's UN office, she transformed black and white source material into dynamic drawings and gouache sketches, ultimately crafting a collage-like mural that pulses with energy and purpose. This mural exemplifies art's ability to build transnational solidarity, linking the U.S. and global civil rights struggles through communal visuals in a shared urban space. More than mere decoration, it served as a tool of visibility and collective action, reminding viewers that the fight against apartheid was both international and rooted in everyday public life.
Maya Lin's Civil Rights Memorial in Montgomery, Alabama, is a contemplative and poetic tribute to the martyrs of the Civil Rights Movement. Created in 1989, the circular black granite table is inscribed with the names of individuals who died in the struggle for racial justice between 1954 and 1968. A thin sheet of water flows continually over the surface, inviting touch and reflection. Lin, a Chinese-American artist and architect also known for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, designed this piece to evoke memory through simplicity and serenity. Inspired by Martin Luther King Jr.'s words, "Until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream," the work transforms text into ritual. Visitors engage with the piece physically and emotionally, tracing names through water. In doing so, it bridges sculpture, civil rights history, and public mourning, turning remembrance into a tactile act of justice. Painted across a major intersection outside the Brooklyn Museum in June of 2020, the Black Trans Lives Matter mural is a bold declaration of visibility, resistance, and love. Created by over 100 volunteers and artists, each letter in the mural was individually designed by Black, trans, and queer artists to reflect themes of identity, pride, and struggle. Emerging during the global uprisings after George Floyd's murder, the mural highlights how Black trans individuals face disproportionate violence, discrimination, and erasure, even within broader civil rights movements. This work does more than beautify a street. It transforms public space into sacred ground for memory and protest. It's a call for intersectional justice, reminding us that civil rights must include gender identity and expression. The mural has become a pilgrimage site for activists and allies, showing how street art can foster community, visibility, and urgent dialogue about who gets seen, heard, and protected. As we close this week's exploration of civil rights and the art of resistance, we turn to the Memorial to Peace and Justice in Montgomery, Alabama, a searing, powerful installation dedicated to victims of racial terror in the United States. Created by the Equal Justice Initiative, the memorial features over 800 steel monuments, each representing a county where lynchings occurred, engraved with the names of those who were murdered. These markers hang above visitors like specters of history, forcing confrontation with the violence that shaped the American landscape. This is not just a memorial, it's a reckoning. It reminds us that art can hold space for grief, truth, and healing while challenging silence and denial. As we've seen throughout this lecture, civil rights art takes many forms: photographs, murals, protests, and monuments. Together, they testify to the enduring power of creativity in confronting injustice. They demand that we remember and that we act.